Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. When the Sith created the Confederacy of Independent Systems and their droid army, they inadvertently created one of the most cost-efficient military forces the galaxy had ever seen. Contrary to popular belief, the Separatist Alliance was actually in no position to challenge an entity as large as the Galactic Republic. Like the Imperial Japanese Navy during World War II, the Separatist Navy's only hope against the Republic was a quick, swift strike that eliminated the Republic's military capabilities. The Separatist droid army did manage to surprise the Republic with their massive droid army, which initially outnumbered the clone army by many times, but in the long run, it was just a matter of time before the Republic transitioned from peacetime to war footing. The imbalance in manpower, raw resources, capital between these two factions was just simply enormous. It's something that the Confederacy could never really hope to overcome. The planet of Coruscant alone was more powerful and populated than the entire Outer Rim coalition. And the core regions of the galaxy had several planets that were able to rival Coruscant's wealth and population. And so this is why most of the political and economic power in the galaxy is centered in the core regions, and they are not to be messed with. And so in order to survive, the Confederacy had to come up with extreme cost-saving measures. They had to produce one of the most efficient and cheapest per-unit military forces in galactic history. And they decided, not surprisingly, to go with mass-manufactured automated droids. This is one of the major advantages of the Confederacy. At its core was an industrial manufacturing capability that was massive compared to the relative small size of the Confederacy's population. This is why a tiny faction like the Separatist Alliance was able to challenge essentially the entire galaxy and almost win. And in many ways, the Galactic Empire needed to adopt this line of thinking in order to accomplish its nearly impossible goal of trying to pacify the entire galaxy. If you take a look at Palpatine's policies during the late Republic period and early Empire period, his main focus was consolidating power into the executive branch. He nationalized several companies and industries, even nationalized entire planets and systems of resources. And the final piece of this massive war machine he was trying to create was the seizure of the intergalactic banking clans, which allowed him essentially establish his own federal banking system, which allowed him to print credits whenever he wanted to. The TIE fighters, the mass recruitment and conscription of Imperial citizens, was all designed to be a cost-effective way to swarm the galaxy with loyal enforcers of the Emperor's will. But of course, a living and breathing army will never be quite as cheap and easy to maintain as an automated one, especially in a galaxy as advanced as the one in Star Wars, where droids are relatively cheap to build. In our own world, automated war machines are still in their infancy, thank God, but we still see their impact on the battlefield changing how wars are fought on a daily basis. Take drones, for instance. They're one of the most rapidly developing weapon systems in the world, and your average consumer can buy them almost anywhere, in an electronics store or in a toy store even. And these things can allow relatively poor nations and insurgent groups to challenge and threaten even the most developed and powerful military forces in the world. Drones are not just extremely terrifying weapons, they also have surveillance and scouting capabilities that have fundamentally changed how armies move. And I actually think if the Empire focused on utilizing this technology, they could have asserted their dominance over the galaxy for a much longer time. Now, technically speaking, the Galactic Empire banned the use of battle droids after the horrors of the Clone Wars. This was a very popular move. Both the citizens of the Republic and Confederacy had witnessed just how deadly these automated and unthinking war machines could be. Sentient beings can also be unthinking, cold, and commit war crimes, but what made the droids so terrifying is their efficiency and relentlessness. Their ability to patrol without stopping for sleep or meals. From a tactical standpoint, the clone troopers were just as deadly as the droids, if not more competent. There's definitely a psychological factor behind deploying droids to a battlefield. That just makes sentient beings very unnerved. But of course, the Empire was never one to follow its own rules. Despite the ban on battle droids, they eventually commissioned the creation of the KX series, which the Empire cleverly called a security droid, but in fact was just a battle droid that was deployed without a blaster. But battle droids aren't necessarily the best solution to the type of peacekeeping operations the Empire was used to. Sometimes you need the flexibility and problem-solving capabilities of a human army for such a role. Plus, as mentioned, overall anti-droid sentiment was pretty high in the galaxy, and so the appearance of an Imperial droid army in any local system could really stir up a lot of problems. But what about the sky? Out of reach and out of sight most of the time. Aerial assets didn't necessarily have to be manned because they aren't that visible. And an automated flying platform isn't necessarily going to be called a battle droid. Here on Earth, we've actually accepted automated aerial assets like drones far earlier than we've accepted, war machines patrolling our streets that are automated. Now, the Empire, despite its love for surveillance, didn't really have too many aerial options that were automated aside from the Viper droid, which is more of a stealthy probe droid without any real fearsome enforcement capabilities. It had its uses, but especially after the Rebel Alliance started conventional warfare against the Empire, it lacked the kind of punch you needed for the battlefield. And I think the perfect solution for the Empire was the Harchal Engineering's HMP Droid Gunship. For those of you not familiar with Harchal Engineering, this was not your normal, average shipbuilding company. This was essentially a religious cult that worshipped the act of building starships. Named the Shicharians, these cultists believed that building beautiful machines, got them closer to their gods. Whatever works, man. And if you take a look at their work, they were clearly very inspired. And they really excelled at two things. One was creating advanced droid brains for their various platforms, and two was precision manufacturing, which means that they made some pretty fearsome automated weapon systems. The HMP Droid Gunship was 12.3 meters in length and 11 meters in width and 3.1 meters in height. To give you context, a school bus is roughly around 10 meters in length. So these things were actually pretty large, flying saucers, and because there are no human operators on board, you save a lot of space. You don't need a cockpit or any of the systems that might protect or aid a pilot. This meant that the HMP gunship could carry a lot more munitions than a manned gunship. The HMP had two turreted twin medium laser cannons on its cheeks, another single medium laser cannon mounted on its chin, two twin light laser cannons giving the ship 5 energy weapons, along with 2 variable payload missile launchers that could shoot anything from concussion bombs, EMP missiles, to even proton torpedoes. The lack of human pilots also meant that this thing could accelerate up to 100 Gs, which is insane. To give you a little context, the average human can withstand maybe 4 to 6 Gs before passing out. Sustained travel at 6 Gs would be fatal for most people. Now, fighter pilots wearing special suits and with special training can withstand up to like 9 Gs for a second or two when pulling off crazy maneuvers. I mean, even 1 G in a car gives us linear acceleration at around 2.74 seconds from 0 to 60 miles per hour. 100 Gs would completely obliterate us. No human body could withstand that kind of acceleration in a car that would be equal to 0 to 60 in 0.06 seconds, which is simply incredible. And so this HMP is not only heavily armed, it's also ridiculously maneuverable and quick to accelerate. It's almost instantaneous. Its movement is like a Super Saiyan, or like a Jedi. Seeing something like this in the air would be terrifying and demoralizing for troops on the ground. This also made it very hard to hit these droid gunships with any type of munitions from the ground, especially unguided munitions. And even if you did hit them, they still had high-powered deflector shield generators on board. Furthermore, this platform had the ability to accelerate up to 14,200 kilometers per hour, which means that it could basically cross our disk planet in about 3 hours, meaning that you can strategically place these ships in a way so that they can respond to threats planet-wide, usually within minutes, if not seconds. This ship also had the ability to hover and vertically take off and land, meaning it could operate and be serviced without any larger infrastructure. The HMP achieved this not only because it had a heavy repulsor lift, it also had ion drives, which were all powered by a fusion reactor. And so what we have here is a flying tank armed to the teeth and armored and shielded against most ground fire. At the same time, this flying tank has the speed of a starfighter and is more maneuverable than most things flying in the air. I mean, just think about the implications of such a platform. It would be completely game-changing. And think about how easy it is to deploy these things. The HMP droid was intelligent, so you could just communicate with it like a soldier. And better yet, it won't question your orders. It won't hesitate when you tell them to blow up civilian targets and infrastructure.
Your target lies in the mountains to the east. The army will follow. Leave no survivors. Go by your command!
It would just fly off with its advanced suite of sensors and detection capabilities and patrol relentlessly until it ran out of fuel, which it almost never did because fusion reactor. These things never got hungry, they didn't need to sleep. Unlike the rebels, they were hunting down. They could scan the ground looking for electrical signals or heat signals, and once they spotted something, it was game over. The rebels on Lothal would have been harassed endlessly by these machines until they were cornered and destroyed. The Mimmonese would not have been able to hide in all that mud and grime on their planet from the sensors of the gunships. I mean, not even their trenches would have offered much protection from above. These HMP gunships, under the command of General Kalani, almost single-handedly trapped and then destroyed the Onderonian rebel movement, which would spawn Saw Gerrera's partisans. The only thing saved them was the CIA. The Jedi. they intervened and managed to use a third-party arms dealer to smuggle portable man-pads for the Onderonian partisans to use. While most conventional handheld weapons couldn't penetrate a HMP shields, a purpose-built warhead on a platform like the RPS-6 system could take down an HMP with a single shot. When in gunship mode, the HMPs did tend to slow down considerably so its weapon systems could acquire targets and fire more accurately. This was the only time these things were vulnerable. These ships also carried radioactive fuel in external tanks for their fusion reactor, and this was another weak spot that you could target only if the shields were down. But just think about how much damage these gunship droids could have done in various battles against the Rebellion. At the Imperial base on Scarapathis, they would have quickly pinned down the Rogue One distraction team and destroyed them. During the Battle of Hoth, all the Empire needed to do was to, drag these droids to the planetary shield, and then they could have reached the Rebel hangars and made quick work of all those evacuation vessels before they even flew off into space. These HMP gunships were not only great for assaulting targets, they could actually carry up to 12 droids into battle in carriers beneath their hull. This could be BX series commando droids or super battle droids, which were extremely formidable and would have been very challenging for the Rebel fighters to destroy. And during the Battle of Endor, these gunships could have provided overwatch and destroyed the Ewoks in their village. We know this because during the Clone Wars, the Separatists used the HMPs very effectively to attack the Wookiees in their tree villages on Kashyyyk, and those trees were a lot bigger. These gunships even had the speed and power to chase down all types of starships ranging from fighters to larger freighters. They even had the capabilities of flying in space, thanks to those ion drives. During the Battle of Ringo Vinda, HMP droids were able to take out a Republic Nu-class shuttle carrying the clone Tup after he accidentally murdered his Jedi General. And get this, HMP gunships cost about the same as a TIE fighter, 60,000 credits per unit. And the HMP gunship is considerably cheaper if you consider the lack of pilots that needed to be trained to operate this platform. I think it's a no-brainer to select the HMP over a TIE fighter. These things are superior in almost every category and have a lot more flexibility and options. This is probably one of the most formidable weapon systems ever developed. Not only did it have huge amounts of firepower and defensive capabilities, this gunship could reliably always arrive within minutes or seconds whenever a beleaguered Imperial unit needed support because of that insane speed. These HMPs were able to not only stay on station as gunships and support from the air, they could even drop reinforcements. There's really nothing that this droid can't do. And so not incorporating these droids into the Empire's larger peacekeeping initiative, which was undermanned and didn't have enough firepower, was a huge oversight. A squadron of these vessels in any local system can easily suppress a rebel movement and limit their abilities to operate. This would have completely changed how the Galactic Civil War played out. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.